how well the contract was negotiated.
Hi, thank you. The open book arrangement, excuse me, because we were in the year of COVID where the sports centre wasn't open or able to offer the full range of services as expected in the contract, the open book showed us what it was trading at. So it was really difficult to compare with the original contract, which, as Liz said, why it's unfair to hold them to that, because that assumed that they could open normally at normal capacity for normal working hours, which of course they couldn't do through that first year of trading because we had the COVID lockdowns and restrictions. So the open book allowed us to really clearly see what they had traded at through that year. And it now, to use your word, Councillor Cook, closes and we revert back to what was agreed we would pay, or they pay us, in the contract. Don't know if I answered your question that was asked in a different way.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
I think I'm on the same wavelength as Councillor Cook. As usual, I would suggest. Eventually. It's probably an inappropriate question, and it's maybe something we can't answer. But we negotiated a contract with them at the start, and maybe it's interesting to, now that we've seen them trade, are more people using the leisure centre than we had anticipated, even with COVID happening. Maybe there's some things we can have learned that give us guidance to think, gosh, that was a good deal we negotiated, or maybe it was not a good deal we negotiated. Maybe that's an unfair thing to expect an open book, and that's not why you should do an open book. But naturally, that kind of question, Councillor Cook and I.
Is that okay if I answer that one? And it's clearer now, thank you. So the performance of the supplier, everyone active, was extremely good in the year that they had. So it wasn't a comparison because we had nothing to compare it with. But in terms of what they've managed to achieve in that year was as good as we could have expected, and maximised it. But it's not without longer term implications. For example, if somebody doesn't begin a sport at a certain age when they're young, they don't suddenly take it up the year after. So the year the whole industry lost of people not starting sports and things because they didn't have access to them will have a knock-on on all users for years to come. So there is learning in that regard, and that's something we're discussing in detail with them.
Councillor Horrell.
Chair, whilst we're on the Sport and Leisure Park, under Key Projects 19.1, it says that we haven't completed the contract negotiations and the final costs, and there are still some sort of niggling points that I know are being attended to. Because would it be possible to understand when we're anticipating that, and do we have enough money allocated to cover whatever negotiations are still going on regarding the final contract cost? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking to Liz for clarification on the date we've extended to. I think it's the end of September. Does that ring true with you? I will verify that, but I think it was a 3-month extension on the 12th month, which was agreed because some of the final defects need access to the leisure centre in full. So we've got to have the appropriate times to have it closed for us to be able to do things like replace some of the pool tiles. So that's why we've all agreed an extension on there, and we are seeking for it to come within budget.
Councillor Langley.
Yeah, just going back to the figures on the leisure centre, how does it compare, the open book year, to what the business plan anticipated?
it underperformed because it wasn't as open for the same amount of hours or offering the amount of lessons that the forecast had in it.
Yeah, granted, but how does that, the number of visitors compare to what we were expecting on the business plan? We expected it to be lower than that. We just wondered by how much. Because that will affect what we think about what's going to happen next year, this current year.
I'd have to come back to you on exact figures, I'm afraid, if I can provide those after the meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Rotter. Councillor Leaming.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the contract with the Sports and Leisure Park, is it fair to say that under the contract, if everyone active continues to do good business, our receipts themselves will increase as we have a profit share as the contract means that we get a share of that profit. So I think we all win if people go and use the wonderful new leisure park.
Thank you. Yes, that's the correct statement. It's got a profit share on it, so the better the leisure park does, the better we do too.
So we've already mentioned item 19.1. So if we now move on to item 19, page 52, section. Councillor Horrell.
Sorry, Chair. We're back where we were focused on the Sport and Leisure Park. I have a question on 13.4F. River Park, that we were going to sort of decommission it and change its status, and so, but we're still carrying a rates cost for that, which is obviously sort of dead money at the moment. And it says in the report that we're not clear when there might be an indication of change. Can someone explain where we are on that? Because obviously that is just, as I say, a cost to us with no return at this point.
Yeah, we have all the information that we're able to provide with the is it the rates office, the valuation office, who determine this factor. Significant backlog of their office, and we have no indication of when they're going to get to it. Our estates team keep pushing. It's on their radar to chase all the time. We have no influence on that backlog at all. So all we can do is keep reporting progress to you, keep pursuing it, and at the moment we're uncertain as to what that outcome will be. So whilst I think originally we were predicting a degree, a high degree of certainty that we would achieve that, currently I think we're less sure on that. So that remains a risk for this year as well.
So, any further questions on Councillor Horrell?
Can somebody explain, please, help me to understand 13.4E, what happened with the general election expenses?
Yeah, so again, that was forecasting of the recovery of the costs for running the general election in 2019, and we over forecasted the amount that would be recoverable. So there's an adverse variance there.
Is that for sort of facilities, polling stations, etc., and staffing it? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All those costs of running the election.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair. Page 49, it's 13.4G regarding recycling and refuse collection and the contracts costs. I'm probably going to answer some of that anyway to myself and say, well, that there will be contract costs that may be higher because of fuel, for example. But I just wondered what other costs there were that related to the annual cost and the additional variable contract costs. Thank you.
Yes, so just for clarity, so this report refers to the 21-22 financial year, so not so much about the fuel costs because that's been more recent rises, but this was additional works we did during COVID, for instance, the fly tipping works, and additional street cleansing works that we had to do when people came out of lockdown. So it relates to those sorts of.
Yeah, and on that line in particular, also the on the refuse collection service, we had to significantly increase the collection of our glass collection, our glass recycling points as well. And so that that. Oh right. Oh sorry. Yeah. So we increased the frequency of glass collection from our bottle banks at sites, and that ran throughout the COVID period, and so it had a significant impact on that budget.
It's because people were home having jam sandwiches. Do we have any further questions on the whole rest of the main report, Councillor Horrell?
Chair, I know that it's been said already this evening that there was some lack of knowledge about some of the additional government-funded grants that we're going to receive. 16.1 lists the specific support packages that we receive money for, which comes to 2.6 million. Is that now all, are we up to speed, as it were? Is there anything else that we are claiming that hasn't been resolved at this point, given that this is obviously some historical data here, but are we straight on all that, or are we still disputing anything? Thank you.
No, to the best of my knowledge, we're not disputing anything. We've had in all the COVID grant.
Thank you. Any other questions on the rest of the main report before we come to the appendices? No? Councillor Horrell.
Page section 23 on the commercial activities. How many, we were holding assets of about just about 70 million. How many properties is that roughly that's attributable to? And also, in terms of the transfer of operational assets, could someone just explain that a little more? Thank you.
Chair, I'd have to go away and look up exactly how many assets that relates to. And the transfer from PPE operational assets to investment property to do with the transfer of garages from the general fund.
Okay, if we've got no further questions on that main report, we'll come to Appendix 1 on page 61. Questions on Appendix 1? Any questions on Appendix 2 on page 63? Questions on Appendix 3 on page 65? Councillor Horrell.
Chair, Councillor Power usefully indicated that there were going to be some notes added to this report, which I think would be helpful because it's quite stark in certain places, so it would be helpful to understand some of those movements. Will that be done for this report, or is that only going to come for the outturn report 22-23?
It will not come for this, Chairman. I can give you an idea of what the figure, the cost of service, including the staff costs included in the figures, about 340. I've gone through. Further detail is available in the where they do not net off.
Thank you. I would also like to say thank you, Councillor Power, for noting previous feedback from this committee, taking that forwards to your portfolio. Do we have any questions on Appendix 4, page 67 to 69? Appendix 5. Councillor Horrell.
Chair, could someone explain the SIL funding? We have a budget of 992 and then a revised budget and a reforecast through to 23-24. I know a lot of communities would like to spend some SIL money, but are being told they can't. But it looks as if we do have some, so I just wanted to understand what was happening. There's quite a large variance flowing through there. Thank you.
Chairman, we agree. I mean, parishes do have their own SIL funding. There's no restriction on how they fund those. But there is an awareness that we would like to enable more community projects, and I believe Councillor Porter has that in hand.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. That's good to know. So we are, without a cabinet decision to approve it, but it is our intention currently to have a 2023 SIL cycle.
I expect there to be increased disbursements from the SIL pot. I will not go further than that without Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Councillor Power. Do we have any questions on Appendix 6? No? Okay, do we have any debate on this paper? Glad, because I can smell a delicious waft of garlic wafting in through the door and it's suddenly making me hungry. So thank you for your questions this evening, your engagement on this paper. We're happy that we've all had the chance to properly discuss this and scrutinise this. It's my understanding, Mr. Basin, that these are going to go to the performance panel in future. Is that, do I have the correct understanding? I thought we'd agreed that at the previous meeting.
It will depend on meeting cycles. We can respond to the preferences of the committee. So if the outturn papers are consistent with your meetings in the following year, which we can do when we set the timetable, you may feel it's better for the full committee to look at them. Otherwise, the performance panel can also fill that role as well.
Thank you. So that's to be confirmed as we go along. Okay, thank you. Coming on to item 9 of our agenda, to note the latest forward plan of key decisions. Are we happy to note those? Thank you. And I mentioned that we'll be adding to the work programme the meeting in January. Item 10, Councillor Horrell, we have a question.
I do, Chair. I think it would be helpful, given that we know we have some key decision points, gates, that we are coming to for not only station approach, but we will have one for central Winchester, because there's a decision coming, I think, for March 23, so it needs to come to scrutiny before that. And I think that's important. Councillor Power mentioned earlier that there's a revised budget being looked at in October once she's had the chance to do the work that she's looking to undertake from an inflation point. Is that revised budget coming here, October? And also, finally, we discussed at length last time the scrutiny for the local plan. We still don't have any announcements regarding whether that's coming here or it's going to the LPAG meeting, and if so, is the LPAG meeting the scrutiny meeting for the local plan? So for me, there are some elements here that are still not clear, and I think we should be planning in broadly, certainly on the major projects, given we've been given indicative dates when they come onto the schedule, but whether we're doing the budget and also the local plan here or elsewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Very good point. We didn't reach a conclusion on the local plan and whether that would come to scrutiny. I understand the officers feeling that taking it to LPAG and then bringing it to scrutiny is duplication, but I feel very much that they service different parts of the process, in that LPAG feeds into the formation of that and the agreement of that, and then Scrutiny provides additional feedback once those have been put in place. So yes, I've made a note for that to be taken away and discussed, as well as the CWR dates and other major dates to be added to our work.
Chair, I don't want to be pushy, but we did discuss the local plan last time. The monitoring officer took that away. We're on to the next meeting and the local plan discussions are coming up thick and fast. I think we all would just appreciate, an understanding of which meetings we're going to process that at, so that we're all entirely clear. I don't know whether Mrs. Adey has a view or not.
Thank you. Yes, and apologies for not bringing it in time for this meeting. It's currently planned for the local plan to have a concentrated LPAG. It's not been booked in yet because we haven't agreed the times and dates with the chair. But as I say, a concerted LPAG, much longer detailed LPAG to make sure that we cover all of the local plan in there. That's where the monitoring officer is at the moment with LPAG for the scrutiny. But I note your intention to take it away, Chair.
Many thanks. Councillor Rutter?
I was just going to say, Chair, if it's felt that there should be a scrutiny meeting for the local plan as well, should we have a separate meeting for that? Because I think it's going to be the case. It definitely will take all evening.
That will be a long one, Councillor Rutter. Okay, thank you for your input on that. Mr. Both.
Just to respond on the point Councillor Horror made about the any proposals around a revised budget, they would be brought forward as part of the medium-term financial strategy, which is on the work plan there. So we can find with that.
Thank you. So we've had a bit of a discussion on that. Is everyone happy with our discussions on the work programme, with adding in the additional dates for the upcoming projects as soon as we have them and the like? Fabulous. That concludes our items for this evening, our business for this evening. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for good questioning and particularly on station approach, the good recommendations and feedback we've had for Cabinet. So thank you. That concludes our business for this evening. Have a lovely evening.